know that the Arabs control $16 billion in this country? They own a chunk of Fifth Avenue, 20 downtown pieces of Boston, a part of the port of New Orleans, an industrial park in Salt Lake City. They own big hunks of the Atlanta Hilton, the Arizona Land and Cattle Company. Part of the bank in California, the Bank of the Commonwealth in Detroit. They control Aramco, so that puts them into Exxon, Texaco, and Mobil Oil. They're all over. New Jersey, Louisville, St. Louis, Missouri. And that's only what we know about. There's a hell of a lot more we don't know about, because all of those Arab petrodollars are washed through Switzerland and Canada and the biggest banks in this country. For example, what we don't know about is this CCA deal and all the other CCA deals. Right now, the Arabs have screwed us out of enough American dollars to come right back and with our own money buy General Motors, IBM, ITT, AT&T, DuPont, US Steel, and 20 other American companies. Hell, they already own half of England.
Then one day I came home and watched a TV show called 60 Minutes. The entire program was on the vast expansion going on in the Middle East since the 1974 oil embargo. At that very moment I knew I could only be happy working in the Middle East, where the challenge equaled my abilities and motivations. By this time I had taught myself how to type, and had developed knowledge of business administration within an organization, so I began the great push on General Motors to introduce me to their Middle East GM dealers. After 6 months of phone calls and letters I was nowhere. General Motors did not get involved in recruiting people for their dealers at that time. One day as I was handed my Friday paycheck, I said to myself, I am going to go to New York this weekend and knock on a few doors at the General Motors World Headquarters for overseas operations on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Monday morning when I appeared they told me to leave, because they could not help me. So I pounded my hand on the table, and told them I was tired of writing and calling for 6 months, and now I had flown all the way from San Francisco to talk with them, and after working on GM products for 15 years, I felt they had to help me. Reluctantly at first, they allowed my resume to be handed out at an overseas dealers convention. After that my phone never stopped ringing. I was getting calls from people representing countries I had never heard of before from all over the world. Within 6 days I took the highest offer from a United Arab Emirates Buick dealer whose brother-in-law was the president of OPEC as well as a General Motors dealer himself. After working 6 months in the sand with not much more than a hammer and a pair of pliers, I came home failing to convince the dealer I worked for to purchase the necessary repair equipment to really properly train their staff. Their hesitation to build a General Motors service department conforming to current U.S. standards was not without good reason. How can you justify giving a sophisticated engine analyzer to a service department that employs an Indian service manager with 2 foremen, one from Iraq and the other from Afghanistan, and all the mechanics are from India? This kind of technology was completely alien to their countries. But until recently so were American automobiles, and I was able to teach them how to overhaul automatic transmissions under the worst possible conditions. So, I knew with time, they would be able to comprehend our repair procedures and diagnostic equipment. My problem was convincing the 85-year-old illiterate Arab owner of the company, who did not speak a word of English, about these wonderful modern inventions. Upon my return to the US, I said to myself, if they are not willing to take the chance themselves, then I will buy the equipment, and take it to them, and prove to all the automotive dealers what this equipment can do for them in the biggest marketplace in the Middle East today, Saudi Arabia. I made a presentation on this idea, and afterwards gained some financial support for this project from the equipment manufacturers and suppliers. We decided to take a complete General Motors repair shop to a country I had never been to before, in a 35-foot motorhome converted into a mobile workshop and showroom. I did not have a lot of money to do this, but purchasing and constructing the unit, and covering the unit's expenses was my promise to the suppliers in exchange for them providing the equipment. I searched the entire U.S. motorhome inventory until I found just the right one. I purchased a used repossessed motorhome in California for the right price with all the basic facilities I needed. In the back was the kitchen, bathroom and shower. 2 beds came down from the ceiling, so most of the interior could easily be removed to make room for over 1,500 tools including a milling machine, to resurface cylinder heads. When an engine overheats, that piece weighed 1 ton by itself. 2 metal lathes, the best most complete electronic engine analyzer, and all the special and standard GM tools that we use in the United States today. When I went to have the motorhome suspension reworked to my specifications, in order to carry the increased weight, the technician at the shop told me that it was impossible to put on the amount of weight I had without damage to the frame or axles. But, as you will see later, the unit made it up and down the Saudi mountains without ever incurring any structural damage. From the time we thought of the idea to the time it was built and delivered to Detroit for the General Motors International Dealers Convention was 3 months. The annual convention includes every General Motors franchise dealer worldwide, excluding North America. We had our unit displayed with other participants outside the hotel. We did not need any outside electric power to run our unit, because it had its own generator that was operated by a master control panel containing gauges, switches and a warning lamp system to monitor and direct the power supply to all the different pieces of equipment inside the unit. From this panel we could start the generator, then turn on the engine analyzer, and start the motorhome engine to monitor and demonstrate the motorhome on the analyzer. We would then go on to operate the metal lathe, or arc welder, demonstrate air conditioning equipment. My partner stuffed all the mailboxes in the hotel with a brochure I had printed in advance during the second day of the convention. When the dealers came out of the meeting, every dealer went to check the desk for messages. At that moment, we walked in, finding them all with the brochure in their hands talking about it. We heard Middle Eastern dealers saying to the GM executives, "How can a small company do a project like this, printing bilingual brochures, and GM cannot even print their new car material in Arabic and English?" By the next year, GM had in operation 2 mobile classrooms after mine, and started increasing their information reflecting the dual linguistic concept. From Detroit, we drove the unit to New York, and loaded it onto a ship. However, when the ship tried to pull out of New York Harbor, it ran aground, slicing a 60-foot hole in the hull, which caused 100,000 gallons of the ship's diesel fuel to spill into New York Harbor. Our unit was not damaged, and after a month of repairs to the ship, it was on the high seas for the Middle East.